This is a Rosewill Blackhawk mid-tower case where I will be installing the Corsair H100i. First thing we need to do is pop off the front cover. Good, strong, firm pull comes right off. Next, we're going to need to remove the screws that hold on the top cover on the front. These screws come off quite easily, and these are different from the back screws. These threads, it's threaded all the way to the top. The full length of the screw is threaded. On the back, same approximate location, but these screws are different. They're only threaded halfway. You're going to want to pay attention to that. Next, a firm push will release the top cover on both ends. Takes a little bit of work. Now you'll notice that the wiring here that's attached to the top cover would have been in this location, but I've already actually removed it. Next thing we need to do is undo the screws and remove the side cover and pull out the stuff inside, loosen up the wires out of the Velcro, and then we're going to be removing the top fan. This is a 240 millimeter fan. There's 4 screws, pops right out. You can save this for later if you like. I didn't bother. I replaced all of these fans with stuff that's much quieter. Now, you'll notice here that the radiator is going to fit in this space. The screws do line up. Middle screws and end screws, and you can see where it reaches here at the end. It's going to have to be cut out. Now, I'm placing this here, and I want you to see that the lid does not close all the way at this location here. So what we're going to need to do is cut all this plastic mesh out that's underneath the metal mesh that's actually on the top of the cover. You're checking the length here. You can see we pretty much need to take out to both ends. Now, I'm using these nippers, clippers, cutters, clipping all these spots I've already pre-marked. I found that it's best not to have this resting on something rather solid. You need a little flex so I can get the tips in there and push on the metal mesh in the back a little bit. Give me some flex so I can cut this all out. I do want to leave some. I'm left some on the sides to give it some support, but it may not have actually been necessary because once the radiator is attached underneath this is going to support, the radiator itself will support the metal mesh on the top. We are not going to penetrate that metal mesh on the top like some others have done. Now here I am cutting out what I think is enough, and it is not. I'm just going to cut out the center, and I had this whole plan of having the pump portion stick through that little hole that you see, and then I'm just taking out some here in the middle, but I have found that that's not going to work. So I actually need to cut here on all 4 corners. I am cutting between the outer edge most hole that you see directly in the corners and then the hole just to the side of it that actually will go into the radiator. I'm splitting the difference between the two because what you will find is I'm using that whole center section down the length of the case to support the radiator. Do the opposite end, of course, real quick. I've sped this up. You get the idea. Now, this is where I cut out the rest of the mesh that I should have just cut out in the first place. And now it's time to flatten this section out. I am there was a angle up, and then where it flattened off on the top of the case, as you can see there, and I'm flattening that all out. I want this to be straight. This is all going to end up going flat across the top of the case. And instead of using the inside screws to mount the radiator, I'm actually going to end up using one set of the outside, the further distant screw holes. We need to get this flattened out. And not only flattened out, but then it's going to be actually pushed down a little bit. And what I need to do here is support the sides where the sides of the case mount, because it wanted to bend out on me. So I'm supporting that while I'm flattening it out. Now I'm flattening out my corners. Some of these corners that I'm doing here are actually going to be completely bent out of the way a little bit later on. So again, one set of the inside screws, and then on the opposite side is going to be the outside screws. And what we're doing is we're moving it, once the case has got the motherboard in it, we're moving the radiator up and away from the motherboard a little bit in case you have heat sinks on there that would otherwise be in the way. Again, with a little more support and getting that flattened out. The cutters I chose because I didn't want to create fine little particles everywhere. I'm sorry, I thought I sped this part up. It's only going to be another couple of seconds here. All right, so there you can see the radiator didn't quite fit, and I've marked it out. And now I'm going to cut down to where the angle rises from the case. And that's the point I'm stopping the cut at. Right at that angle where it starts. And then we're going to want to start folding that, doing it at the opposite end, of course, and then we're going to want to start folding that inner edge down in. I didn't want I needed the room for the radiator, but I also didn't want a sharp edge. I didn't want to file everything, so I tended to bend it over and flatten it out. And here we're getting a little bit, I am still keeping that rise there. It doesn't look like it here when I'm bending this all over, but it is staying there. I'm just folding the inner flap a little flatter. As you see, I'm kind of getting it hammered in there. Flattening it all out, getting that so the radiator will fit back in there. Again, folding it in further. Now, to get it further away from the motherboard side, which is opposite of the side I'm drilling, I am pre-drilling, and then the holes need to be elongated in the middle a little bit. Now that we're to the middle here, I'm going to elongate the holes just a little bit so that the screws will line up. And now those corner pieces interfere with the radiator, so here's where I am continuing to completely fold those in. And that'll be done on all four corners. And here, as you can see, the radiator now fits